There is a pattern in history, one that has brought down 3 global superpowers over the last 500 years, and right now. In 2026, the United States appears to be following that same path step by step, as if we are rereading the same chain of events that ended in disaster every time before. In 1590, Spain was the richest empire in the world. It controlled roughly half of all the gold and silver on Earth. Its military dominated Europe. Its currency was accepted everywhere. Yet within just 80 years, Spain went bankrupt and became a second-rate power that never fully recovered. In 1914, Britain ruled the largest empire in human history. The sun never set on British territory. The pound sterling was the world's reserve currency. But within 40 years, the empire disintegrated, the currency collapsed. Britain effectively became America's junior partner. In 1991, the Soviet Union was the other superpower. Nuclear weapons, global influence, and satellites spanning the planet. Then, in just 900 days, it dissolved. It was not invaded, nor defeated in war. Its economy collapsed from within. 3 times, 3 superpowers, 3 total collapses, and each one followed nearly the same sequence of stages. Here is what stands out. The United States has already completed 5 of those 7 stages. We are not approaching the pattern. We are already inside it. This is the story of how empires die, why they always believe they are different, and why the math suggests the United States could be next. And this process may be moving faster than anyone wants to admit. Before we dive into the details of the pattern, we need to understand what imperial collapse actually looks like. Not in textbooks, but in real life. Collapse does not begin with invasion or military defeat. It begins with economic breakdown. The empire expands beyond what it can sustain. Military bases in dozens of countries, wars on multiple fronts, promises it cannot keep, debts it cannot repay. At first, the decline is almost invisible. The currency still functions. The military still wins battles. The government still makes confident promises. But beneath the surface, the foundations have begun to crack. Resources are mismanaged. Productive capacity declines. Talented people leave the country. Then the decline accelerates. Allies start seeking alternatives. Enemies test boundaries. Trade partners find other options. Reserve currency status erodes. And suddenly, the very factors that made you strong become weaknesses. The currency everyone demanded begins flooding back home. A globally deployed military becomes unsustainable. Promises once backed by power turn into empty words. This is not theory. It happened exactly this way in Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union, because they all made the same fundamental mistakes, believing their power was permanent, overextending militarily, weakening their currency, and refusing to accept reality even as collapse began. Now let's see how this happened 3 times, in almost the same way. First, Spain, the world's first true global empire. After Columbus reached the Americas in 1492, Spain wiped out the Aztec and Inca empires and seized the richest gold and silver mines in history. By the mid-1500s, Spanish ships were carrying about 200 tons of silver per year. By 1600, that amount had doubled. Spain effectively controlled Europe's money supply. Spanish silver coins became the world's reserve currency. Everyone wanted them. And this is where the pattern begins. A country that controls global money starts to believe it is indestructible. King Philip II was one of the richest rulers in history, and he spent that wealth building an empire. Stage 1, military overextension. Spain was fighting on multiple fronts at once. The Ottoman Empire, France, rebels in the Netherlands, the English Navy, as well as conflicts in the Americas and Asia. By 1580, it had military obligations on 4 continents. Half of state revenue went to the military, yet it still was not enough. Stage 2, currency debasement. When taxes proved insufficient, copper was mixed into silver coins. The nominal value stayed the same, but the real value fell rapidly. Inflation exploded. Stage 3, debt spiral. Spain borrowed heavily from European bankers when it could not repay. It declared bankruptcy in 1557. 1560, 1575, and 1596 for bankruptcies in 40 years. Stage 4, decline in productive capacity. Paradoxically, the precious metals from the Americas weakened Spain's economy. Why produce anything when silver could buy everything? Industry declined, agriculture stagnated, and wealth flowed abroad to pay for imports instead of staying in the country. When silver production declined, the system collapsed. Stage 5, social decay. Crime increased, poverty spread, and the productive population emigrated. By the late 1600s, Spain was only a shadow of its former self. In less than a century, the world's superpower became an ordinary European state. Now fast forward 300 years to the British Empire. At its peak, Britain controlled roughly a quarter of the world's land surface. The pound sterling was indispensable to global trade. London was the world's commercial center, but the pattern had already begun. Britain had military commitments across 6 continents. When World War I began, it faced a choice: remain neutral or fight and risk bankruptcy. It chose to fight. The cost of the war was enormous, much of it financed by borrowing from the United States. Britain won the war, but emerged heavily indebted. Efforts to maintain the pound's value weakened the economy. Eventually, the gold standard was abandoned, and the currency lost value rapidly. World War II made everything worse. By 1945, Britain owed more than its entire annual economic output. It could no longer sustain its empire. India became independent in 1947. In the following years, other colonies also broke away. By 1970, the British Empire had largely passed into history. The pound shifted from being the world's reserve currency to a regional one. The final example is the Soviet Union. After World War II, it emerged as America's rival superpower. Nuclear weapons, a massive military, and control over Eastern Europe. But the economy could not support that burden. Industrial output was poor, agriculture was inefficient, and technology lagged behind. Oil revenues kept the system afloat. Until oil prices fell, the ruble lacked international credibility. As economic pressure grew, Eastern European countries broke away. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 accelerated the disintegration. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved completely, not because it was invaded or defeated in war, but because it collapsed economically. Once again, the same pattern: overextension, economic weakening, loss of empire, collapse. Now comes the difficult question: is America following the same path? The United States maintains hundreds of bases and security commitments around the world. Defense spending is enormous. National debt is at historic levels. Much of production has moved overseas. Social divisions and institutional distrust are rising. These resemble the early stages seen in past empires. Historically, the next stage is erosion of reserve currency status. Other countries turning to alternatives. Some experts say early signs are already visible. Although the dollar remains dominant, the final stage is usually not a slow decline, but a rapid break. History shows that powerful nations always see themselves as exceptional. Yet similar scenarios have appeared again and again. Whether the United States will share the same fate is not certain. Nations can reform and change course, but ignoring warning signs carries risks. If this perspective has made you see our current moment differently, consider subscribing, because the best way to understand the future is to understand the past, and the clues to tomorrow are often already written in history.